Okay. Quickly, what I wanted to do was to kind of address Vsync with input lag testing, why it causes problems and I guess messes up the results, but also I guess to show some of the benefits of it. So the reason to do this would be Under Night in Birth 2. So this has just come out in early access for PS4 and PS5. Someone pointed out to me that there is an in-game Vsync setting, which I could be wrong, but so far as I know for fighting games is the first time I've seen this, and it certainly has a pretty significant impact on input lag. So let's look first at, this is with Vsync on. As you can see here, this is the fairly standard format for my results. So as always, a heap going on the screen, but we'll just try to focus on what's important. So in this frame, we are looking at the kind of, I guess, the input or the command. So the green line with the video interrupt setting happens at the time that the button's pressed. And so you can understand that the higher up the screen you go, the earlier in the timing it's pressed, whereas the further down the later within this frame that the button's pressed. We then look for the result. So for this one, we can look easily enough at the command history. So looking for the time where the A command lights up, and then we check that the command is actually occurring at the same time. I shave off the results either side just so I get a nice even data collection. So we started at 1008 pixels, and then when we scroll through to the end, we are, yep, it'll go beyond, but the one that's actually included, as denoted by this asterisk, is just under the 1000 pixels. So we've done like we've started where we finished, so you can't bias the results. You don't have a weighting towards the beginning or the end of the frame here. So the results are pretty good. So on average 56 milliseconds, so about the same as what we've seen for most of the recent fighting game releases, and that goes for the command history as well as the animation. And that makes sense. So if this is 41, so 42 nothing happened, 43 nothing happened, 44 nothing happened, and on frame 45 for input time of 51 milliseconds, the animation changes here, and then also second from the bottom, we're not looking at, but it'll come for relevance later, and the command changes. Okay, and that, as you scroll through quickly, you can see is consistent, ignoring all the vorpals and everything else that happens on the screen. So, to quickly then pull up the other example that I've got, and so just remember that 56 on the PS5 version with Vsync on. It's quite a bit faster from memory, about, let's see if I can pull it up quickly. So about 25 milliseconds on the PS4 on the PS5 version. I don't know why this keeps happening where PS5 versions natively have more input lag. Historically, most of them have been sorted out, so you know, there's certainly, I have faith that they'll be able to get the PS5 version down to the PS4 on PS5 version, but I guess we'll just have to see. Now, what we want to have a look at then is the PS5 with Vsync off results, and this I think is where the really impressive results come. So it's harder to look at the sword animation, so what I've done instead is look at the command history, one at the top and one at the bottom. This has the advantage that it's close to the top and the bottom of the screen. I don't have exact numbers, sorry. So it should, if there's any screen tearing, it should capture that reasonably effectively. As you can see already, our averages are ridiculous. So the average that it takes to get to draw the top of the frame is just over a frame. So again, if we think about where our input occurs, this starts kind of at the middle of the frame. So this amount of time takes about 8 milliseconds to get from middle to bottom. If we look here, you can already see that that's the 8, maybe 9 or 10 milliseconds, 9.48 say. And then by the time this appears, it's as if it took 9.48 to get to the top of the screen. the way I always report it is that, you know, go to here, and then if on the next frame it drew it somewhere, then I would take this time to get to the top of the frame. It does break down with Vsync, unfortunately, just because the screen starts drawing but not at the top, hence the tear. If I can try to illustrate that. So if we watch here, this is the green line, so it's going up, so this is the same, this is the same. So it's taking less time to draw to the bottom than it is to the top, and that's because there's a tear halfway through, but we still kind of report the results as if they came from the top. Lots of stuff on the screen as always, but look here. So this is a green line at the top. By the time it hits the bottom, the command history is already registered. The guy's already got his sword animation happening. Okay, and it's the same actually here. Here. In that the command history took an extra frame to appear, but the animations happened. And so, hopefully if we scroll through, yep, so green line here. As we get to the top, this is on the same frame here, although the animation's taking a bit longer, so potentially the tear must be a bit higher. You can see, no, not quite. Can we get it just perfect? No. We will run out eventually. No, not quite. You can see that it takes very little time. So this is in the order of 10, 11 milliseconds to draw this frame. So lightning fast, and even faster when we're, you know, you can see the tear there. So it's starting, technically his sword is slicing here, although you can't see it on the screen because it had already started drawing the last frame. But green line, command history change, attack animation, all on the same frame. So ignore the negative results. That's just it. It reports it as if it had started drawing at the top and got all the way to the bottom, as though. But what's actually happened is it's torn halfway through. And so even same here. It's tearing slightly higher up. This is right at the top, and it's tearing about here. So again, these results are phenomenally fast. What the question will be, will people put up with the tearing? So I guess the first question, which we can do something to answer, is how bad is the tearing, or how often is the tearing? So across we did 64 trials, but we only used, we used 64 trials results. That's interesting. You can see where the purple line is below the baseline, that's when tearing has occurred. Whereas when the purple line is the same, that's when it may not be that tearing didn't occur, but at least the top and the bottom command history were drawn on the same frame. And so looking here, you would suggest that slightly more often than not, screen tearing is occurring. And potentially if you looked at the whole frame, that would be magnified. So I think screen tearing is going to be a fairly consistent feature. As to where exactly that screen tearing is occurring, it'll depend somewhat on how early in the frame the command was entered. Because I think what happens is that once it's close to the top of the screen, you're more likely to get a tear. Like from button press to result, it just gives it more time to tear and then to report or display a new frame. So I can say how often it tears. The decision as to whether that is okay or not is kind of up to the individual player. Whether that improvement from a constant, like a consistent 25 milliseconds of input lag on that PS4 and PS5 version, down to, and again, it's hard to give a precise number, but maybe around 12 milliseconds of input lag is worthwhile for you at the cost of screen tearing. and then that also goes out for the tournament organisers. So it's not a question I can answer. It's more of a personal preference. It's more of a trade-off that people have to make. But the PS5 version, even though it's slower than the other versions, with the hope that that'll get improved in the future, is still pretty much as fast as anything else that's come out recently. The PS4 on PS5 version is ridiculously fast, and the Vsync off version, so long as all of the numbers are essentially making as much sense as they can with tearing, is stupidly fast.